projector issues, so we are up and running. Also, thank you so much. I hope you saw that there's been a sort of last minute change to the schedule, and so hopefully you saw that up on Facebook. Unfortunately, the speaker who is going to come, Alyssa Payne, she can't come this semester, so I'll probably be booking her next semester, so if anyone was interested in seeing her, you can certainly come next semester if you're around. Also, I know you're all in the middle of your projects, right? So good luck with that. Just one for those of you who are doing that, and hope it works out for you. And just a quick reminder for next week, there is no in-person class, right? So we're not meeting next week. I'll be out of town. Just remember that you do have a homework assignment due, the current issues assignment. So just make sure that you're up and ready for that. It's due Monday by midnight. All right, so really excited to have Liz with us today. She was willing to come at the very last minute. I reached out to her on Wednesday afternoon, and she said yes on Wednesday afternoon, so that's wonderful. Thank you. Liz has a very complex background in terms of her experience, both in the fine arts and then in film and then in fashion. And so we're going to be talking about that in our conversation today, so I don't want to give too much up. But she's currently the Chief Creative Officer at Playout Underwear, which you see up here. And we'll be talking about that as well at the end. She also worked with Forte in the photography area and developing all their content. And she works as a consultant for a lot of well-known fashion brands, as well as designers and people that you might not know of. So we'll be talking about that as well, and sort of how she works with her clients. So thank you so much for coming, Liz, today at the last minute. We appreciate it.
Check in with that. Thanks for
having me.
Plenty of
Fluids.
Yes. Hi, everybody.
So I was going to ask you to come next semester, but at the very last minute, this really worked out. So I'm really pleased. So, like I said, you have a very interesting background. And Siri is. Let's just kind of start with your background. Sort of, what did you study, and what sort of was your first job, and how did you get started in your career? And we'll just kind of start there.
So when people ask me questions like that, I'm like, wow, I've been alive a long time because I've had jobs for a long time. I actually went to school for fine art and English literature and art history. I started working I started like apprenticing working artists when I was 10 in 1980, and continued to do that like into my 20s actually. But my very first job, I was 12. Always liked having a job, like having my own money. I definitely have always been sort of a natural risk taker. I basically, my first job that was sort of, let's say, put me on the track to what I do now, was I was on a film set, and I was actually in a delivery truck with a friend of mine, and we were on the lot, and I was maybe 20, I want to say, and I definitely thought to myself, I was like, oh, what are those guys doing? They're painting walls, and I saw these people, and I later found out they were all scenic artists. And I thought, wow, that would be a way to monetize my my art. I could do that. I could definitely do that. I was pretty versatile and could work in a lot of mediums, and so I really just set out to try to find a way into that particular part of that industry. And to do it, I had to be a PA first and get people's copy and their lunch and get yelled at a lot, which was super fun. And totally worth it because it got me to that person that I needed to talk to be able to find out more about how you go about being a scenic artist, which I ended up moving into. So it was great.
I mean, this sort of sets the stage for a lot of your career in terms of figuring out what you want, and then figuring out how to get it, and then going after it. how long did it take you to become a scenic artist?
From that point, it probably took me about 6 months. Yeah, and once I did that though, I did that like throughout my 20s, and it's one of those jobs that like you're the first person to set at like 4 in the morning, and you're the last person who leaves at night, and they just don't care if you sleep or if you eat. And a lot of the time, like you go over and there'll be like all this craft service out, and they're like, don't touch that one, that's for the actors. And you're like, oh, okay. And then they're like, go to that one, and it's like Cheetos or a Twix bar. Yeah, and you just survive on that and you're fine. But yeah, it's like 16-hour days, physical labor, but so much fun, and getting to build sets is awesome. And I worked on a lot of blockbusters in the 90s. I worked on like Lover and Independence Day and Armageddon and like all these movies.
I like the power ballad.
Right? Yeah. But it was fun, and there was this huge level of camaraderie with the people, the crews that worked on those films, and yeah, like it was an amazing experience, and it definitely was one of those things where, you know, I felt like I'm getting paid to paint, which is awesome. It's, you know, it made me paint even more. So I had a couple moments where I'd get so tired and I'd be like, the last thing I want to do when I go home is paint more. And then there were other times when it really would fuel me, and I would have like a 2-week break from any shoots, and I would take that time and just be really prolific. I'd make tons of stuff, and then I did a lot of solo shows and group shows and stuff. At the time I was in Los Angeles.
So was that, were you still thinking at that time that you were going to be a fine artist, or was that?
Yeah, and I definitely was like, I'm gonna be an art star, man, make that happen. And it was interesting though, because my passion for art is always there. Like it influences me so heavily and motivates me, and it's one of those things that, you know, when I'm gearing up to do a shoot, or I'm constructing a campaign, or doing storytelling, like my first thing, my last corporate job was the director of creative production for Intermix, and always my first thing was to go to galleries. I was like, oh, we have our fall book coming up. I'm gonna go hit some shows and like get some inspiration, and that would be always my starting point.
Interesting. It's because so often in fashion, at least from fashion insiders, they're always like, oh, it's always fashion versus the trend, and then art, and everyone else follows. But I happen to agree that it's the opposite way around. Before we get to that, though, because that's a whole other conversation. There was a moment, I think, where you started to decide that maybe you wanted to do more in film as well, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you set your eye on that. What was that?
I did. So I was on a set, and you know, in my like, I actually had cement all over my pants that day. I looked really pro, and I walked over to this woman who was one of the line producers for this film, and I had seen her on a couple of Mercedes commercials too, and I was like, that seems like an interesting gig. Like I feel like I could rock that. I'm gonna go talk to this person about this. And I ended up, I had that initial conversation, and after talking with them, and luckily they weren't like so crazy busy at that moment, and you know, they actually took a second to talk to me. It put the production side of it into my head for real, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna figure out a way to move into that. Before I was able to do that, I ended up doing script supervision, which is, now it's different because it's digitized, but at the time it was seriously like sitting with a giant folder, and you were literally noting with pen in hand the stopping and start marks of the film and video, like of where you were, and making sure and looking at the director's shot list, and basically ensuring that the director was actually getting all the shots that they had wanted to get, because they get caught up and then they're not totally paying attention to all the minute adjustments, and that you're getting every reverse close-up of each person, and that you have everybody doing their lines like facing the camera, and all this like so detail-oriented. And I love that, and doing that first, I did that for 2 independent features and a couple of commercials was great because it actually really helped me on the flip side when I started doing production too. Just
I was going to say, I mean, just
detail.
being that detail-oriented,
Yeah.
that's where that money disappears.
Yes.
It campaigns too, right?
Yes, all those reshoots.
Oops, we forgot that scene.
Whoops.
So you ended up producing films. Do you want to
I did. I worked that all the way up to being like a co-producer and like from associate producer, co-producer, and then producing independent features. And, yeah.
So you were in LA at this time, obviously.
Yeah, I was there.
At what point did you decide LA was done and you had to come to New York and move out of film?
Well,
That was a big change.
The financial crash in 2008 was a large part of that. Basically, at the time, like in 2007 and 2008, I was getting more freelance work on the East Coast than I was on the West Coast. And I just made a decision. My youngest child was graduating from high school, and I basically asked him, I was like, are you gonna feel like I'm abandoning you if I move to New York full time? And he was like, someplace to stay in New York that's not grandma's house. Can I help you pack the truck? Can I drive the truck? What can I do to facilitate this? Both my kids were like, we'll put everything in boxes. Just get there and get a cool place
So
to
nice.
come to. I was like,
So supportive.
thanks. I know, I was like, thanks, guys. But yeah, so they were super excited about me moving, actually. And it was the right thing to do, for sure. Like, the second that I got here, so this is interesting, and this is a story I don't talk about very often, but I had started a small clothing line with 2 friends of mine. I lived in an artist colony in LA for a long time called The Brewery, and we started a line, and we were making like just really cool stuff. We were utilizing our artwork to make fun things, and we were sewing a lot of clothes from scratch and making everything ourselves. And of course, not at all profitable, just out of the love of our hearts and loving fashion so much. I'd always grown up around fashion, always had this huge appreciation for it, and always cared like greatly about clothes and style and having a personal sense of style. But so when I moved to New York, I was like, okay, it's gonna be hard because I'm gonna have to take a pay cut, but I want to work for an independent designer that's working in New York and see if that's something that I want to do. Because in my head, I had always had this fantasy. And I mean, this fantasy looked like a little tiny shop, like in the East Village, where I slept in the back, and I just worked like a little elf, like sewing the clothes and making the things and then putting them out there, and then people would buy them. And
So
I was like,
artist.
yeah, I was like, I want to do that. That would be amazing. Just give me a chance. And so I went, and I ended up working for an independent designer that had a store in the East Village for 15 years, and had another little studio that was in a basement apartment like 4 blocks away, and the shop was on 9th Ave between 1st and 2nd, and I realized really quickly that's literally the last thing I want to do ever. So it was good that I did it, because I realized, I was like, oh, that is all the work. I don't think I could do that. That was the end of the dream. So when I worked for her for a year and a half, I ended up doing all of her marketing, and then like working on, like, I did the windows, I did everything.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was super fun. And she started another location, and we like did the launch of that one. And it was totally, it was an amazing experience. It was totally worth it, but definitely I realized I'm not cut out to do that.
So in LA, you were also doing, if I remember correctly, doing some commercial work and things like that, right? So
yeah,
that
lots
was,
of wardrobe, lots
right.
of lots of wardrobe. Doing, I started doing styling for still photography, which was super fun. And that I sort of backed into because I was working on a set, actually building a set in a studio, and on one of the other sets, the stylist didn't show up. And the photographer was like, hey, you're very clever and do all the things. Would you want to to stop, like put this on hold for a minute and jump in on this. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And like, people get paid for this? I'm gonna do this. I love this.
I'm going to stop you for a second because I think this is an interesting, there's so often, especially I think in today's sort of educational world, we're very, very focused on one thing. There's this idea again that we have to be the best at something. And what you're talking about is sort of being the jack of all trades. I mean, clearly art was sort of your center, but you were willing to sort of jump in and learn new things, you know, at a last moment. So that's why you're here so quickly. But can you speak to that a little bit about just sort of being aware of kind of the different talents that you have and being able to take advantage? Because ultimately all of these things come together in your career.
They do, and they all end up informing each other and like informing the decision making and especially creatively, they all feed and nurture the same part of the self. I think for me, really, I had a realization like in the early aughts, when I was in my early 30s, of understanding that like my career or what I'm actively doing is separate from myself as an entity, and that what I was actually growing was me as a talent, and that could be fostered and moved into different areas of interest, and looking at it more from that perspective and less about the task and more about what can I bring to the task that would actually like help or be a service and change how that's done.
So thinking about yourself more in a branded way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before it was even, like it wasn't even, that was not a thing. Nobody was calling it that. Nobody was thinking about their brand. Everybody was just like a person. And like, I was just thinking about it as sort of my skill sets, like how I could keep evolving my skill sets, and also just help keep it interesting. Because I was like, you know, if I'm gonna spend a lifetime working, then and I love working in general. I love to work. I'm not gonna want to just do the same thing. I'm gonna want to keep evolving, just as a person, as a talent base, as a skill set. The more things I can sort of add to that put me in that same, like puts me on the same path that I want to go on. And that's one of the things too, I talk to people a lot about finding that spot, like thinking about, and not about where you want to be right this second. That's always, you have to be looking at the steps in front of you, but looking more like the long game. Like, what do you want it to look like? And not having it just be like a title, have it be more like, what do you want your life to look like? What is the types of things that you get to do every day? You know, what does it afford you as far as your lifestyle?
Right, beyond work.
Yeah.
I mean, so LA and New York are a lot alike in some ways, but they're completely different in other ways.
Like in fashion.
And, you know, there is sort of a sense of familiarity that starts to, I mean, as you know, the fashion industry in New York is a very small place once you get to know people, so is the film industry in LA. So what was it like to come to New York and have to, in a sense, sort of start over and really have a new focus, because you weren't coming here to do film per se, you were thinking about this fashion piece and other parts of your career?
It was starting over, like legitimately starting over from scratch. And, you know, this was like, 39. And it was a risk. I mean, I spent a large part of my savings just moving, like just doing like the first, last, and actually moving all my stuff and having, you know, a buffer of like 2 months that I figured, you know, I have 2 months to find a job. Like,
wow,
it's that simple.
That's not very much.
No, and I was like, I was terrified. But I also was you know, really focused, and I knew that I wanted to make this move. It felt like the right thing. And it really was starting over. I made an entire new network of connections and people, and you know, it was a lot of like suiting up and showing up. I worked freelance for a lot of e-commerce houses, because I had done a lot of e-com before in Los Angeles. And it's always a good spot to meet other people, especially for styling, photography, assisting, all of that, because everybody uses it like filler work in between the bigger jobs that they love and get paid more for, but nobody wants to have days when they're not working. So obviously, you go ahead and block out all these days of working for Guild Group and Ideally and like everybody. And that's where I made all these connections, a lot of them, and I met different and worked with different photographers all the time as a stylist. And if you worked well together there, they'd be like, oh great, I'd love to use you on something else. And sure enough, you'd get a call that, oh, we're actually shooting for Celine, you want to do it? And I was like, yeah.
Sure, Celine sounds good. We were talking about it before, but you talk a lot about just asking people for jobs, even sometimes saying, let me do it for free. I mean, how do you do that when you don't have any money, or sort of, how do you know sort of going ahead that could turn into something that you have that sense of self to be able to walk in and say, don't pay me, I'll prove myself?
Well, you don't know, but you definitely, you don't, but you gotta roll the dice. Like, I'm always willing to bet the house on myself, like, always, because I know what I'm capable of. I know that, if I really see something and I'm like, this could be really cool, I'm gonna try my darndest to be good at this. But yeah, I've gotten jobs because I went up to somebody and I said, look, I know I don't have this on my resume, this is not on paper, but I know that I can do this job well for you and be great to work with and actually be of service. I'll do it this one time for free. But if I actually nail this and you would want to hire me again, you have to just hire me, at a regular rate that you would pay somebody who has more experience than I do. And it totally worked out. And the stylist was like, okay, she thought I was insane. And then after this 3-day shoot, she was like, oh yeah, you're gonna be in regular rotation. That was great. And I just kept working for them. And
it sounds like it's also a way to sort of validate an idea, right? Like, oh, I think I could be good at that. I think I have the skills. Because there's often this idea of like, oh my God, now I have to go back to school, or I have to go train, or I have to go, start from scratch again. And in many ways, if you believe that you have that skill or that you can adapt that skill from somewhere else, then you can't. I mean, if you just find somebody willing to let you try.
Yeah, and it's also about letting yourself be able to try. I think there's a lot of internal conversations that happen at times where you second guess yourself, or people can have a tendency to sit there and say, oh yeah, but I've never done that before. They're not going to let me do it. Or you can take all those no's for an answer if you want to, or you can go, never hurts to try, and go ahead and give it a shot. And I've had times where I tried stuff and I got into it and I seriously was like a pig on skates. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is razor blades. Like, I have to figure out a way to solve this right now. Not that anyone knew this on the outside, because you gotta keep it calm. But on the inside, I was full panic mode, and I was like, oh, I may have bit off more than I can chew here. But basically, I just took a second and I would like calm myself and be like, okay, first of all, do I know anyone who would know the answer to this? And I'm gonna call them right now. And I've done that. Or like, I'm gonna reach out to them, or the second I leave here tonight, I'm going to their house or to their job where they work or whatever, and being like, hey, I need your help on this. I have to figure out how to do this. I've never done it before.
That's so interesting, because I think that's what most people don't do, right? We just get afraid that, oh, I look stupid and I must be stupid, then I shouldn't say anything. But reaching out to your network, I mean, people are willing to help.
Oh yeah, and I've done, I love doing that for people. I've totally had people come to me. I've had people that were assistants of mine or interns that worked for me in the past or whatever, and they'll email me and they'll be like, is there any chance you have like 15 minutes to talk to me on the phone today. I have a really big question, and I'll be like, yeah, well, you know, tell me when, and I'll call them, and it will be like, how do you, the most giant question in the world, and I'm like, all right, let's start at the beginning. How long do we have? We have 10 minutes. I was like, okay. Do this and here, these are the 5 steps you need to do right now. Don't worry about anything that happens after that. Do those 5 things and then call me back.
See how those go.
Yeah.
How did, so you were working, you know, with different companies here in New York City, and then ultimately took a job with Forte, and that's sort of the heyday of Forte. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun. I was the product styling manager, so I oversaw teams in the US and the UK, and basically the way that everything looked on the website for Mr. Porter, Net-a-Porter, and the Outnet was in my purview. And I worked with an amazing team. It was sort of at the beginning of the US studios here, so when I started there, we had maybe 42, 43 people in that studio. When I left, it was 135 people 3 years later. Just cranking it out. Like their numbers are astronomical. Their deliverables are new uploads every 48 hours. So
wow, how many SKUs per?
Could be up to like 2,400, depending on
every 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and it would be divided between the 2 studios in the UK and the US. At the time, like I'm sure everything has changed because when you bought it, I mean they have their back end works very differently. But yeah, so it was just like constant expansion and working. I hired like so many people when I was at that job. I spent like I felt like I spent half my time just in interviews with people.
And giving back to your network, probably from the past.
Yeah.
2,400, that's a lot. And yet at Forte there was also a high level of quality in terms of the imagery that was shot, even the fonts that were used on the website.
Yeah.
This is sort of all
Everything.
changed. But
like jewelry, we do like 6 to 10 focus layers for jewelry. We'd be selling rings, and nobody had been doing that at the time, like $50,000 rings, sight unseen, selling it on the internet. Like, you need to make it look amazing. It's worth your 10 focus layers and having it be that, you know, you do like every extreme close-up angle you could possibly do of the item, but people were buying it. I mean, they were trusting in the brand and in the curation.
And the film has to come back at this point, right? Because it's lighting, it's scenography, it's product, it's people.
Yeah, I mean all of it, and it's you know, it basically is just in a different format. And production is production. Like it's whether it's still photography or moving picture. At the end of the day, all of those things still have to be accounted for, and you know, you're looking at the same groupings of line items and how is everything going to get done, and having it be very deadline fueled. And e-commerce is such an amazing beast in that way. I loved it. Like I used to work with photographers during the sort of main switchover, and you know, there were a lot of people that really dug their heels in. They're like, this will never take, this is crazy, like you'll never go well. And then, you know, there was this other handful of people I was working with that were very much on board and converting everything over to digital and spending all this money, and I just knew. I was like, there's no going back. This is literally the direction that everything's gonna go. I'm gonna have this be a specialty of mine because I know for a fact we're not going back. Like the day of like full environment sets where you have like 6 weeks to build a jungle and then you have people shooting in there for 2 days are over.
It moves way too fast for that.
Yeah.
And yet we've gotten so much better at shooting images, especially just single images. And I'm curious. This might be our question, but just maybe in a sentence or two. What do you think makes a good image these days? What is it that sort of, you know, is as a director, what are you looking for as a producer?
I definitely think that attention to detail always matters. You know, it's silly and I say it all the time, but I really mean it. It's kind of like how they say that food made with love tastes better. If there's care and proper attention to detail in any type of photography, it always shows through. I've done tons of focus groups for companies and sat there and put images of products, images of model shots, everything in front of people, and they always gravitate toward that. They can't say why, they can't put their finger on it as a consumer, but they always gravitate toward the one that's had like the more attention to detail, it's had the better post-production, and it had more time taken with it. And you know, I've done this a lot as a case study to justify certain budgets for things and to do like larger asks, because there's a difference and the payoff is clear. And I mean, it shows with Net-a-Porter, like their payoff was absolutely that attention to detail and putting the very best that they could put forward. And it was not inexpensive. Like, that's the thing. They didn't have the overhead of brick and mortar, but they had a huge overhead in that their cost per item was a lot higher than most other websites.
I was going to say, they really raised the bar to the point where, in many ways, e-com, the overhead has become very high because of the expectation of 4 to 6 images, a lot of attention to detail. Because, you know, I remember in the early 2000s, you know, we were throwing up an image and hoping it looked good enough, right?
Yeah.
So you left Net-a-Porter when sort of as it switched over to UX, and you now consult, and also we'll get into your role at Playout. But describe sort of your job today. Who are you today in terms of your career? Because you've gone through so many different.
I know. Well, it's nice because it's this amalgamation of things. So I am doing branding and e-commerce strategy consulting, and I've been working for some interesting companies, things that are outside of fashion also, which has been really fun because it's been a little bit of a stretch for me, but it really proved to myself that I can take the storytelling and take it away from that genre. You know, having worked at Intermix the last couple of years and being in that role and having it very much be about, you know, like how many ways can we talk about ruffles and cutouts and headlines and, you know, fringe. It really, you know, was kind of scary and daunting. And, you know, been working on stuff for like a lighting company and worked a little bit for a company that specializes in death services. And it's been like, oh, okay, wait, like all of this skill set and all these tools can be applied to all these other types of products, which is really nice.
Fashion and death.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
If, you know, as a consultant, you start to build an ethos, I think, for lack of a better word, of sort of your point of view or your strategy. And I'm curious sort of what that is when you sit down, because we have a lot of students here who want to be designers, start their own companies. Are there certain things that you just feel very strongly about when you sit down the first time with a client?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that it takes to make a brand, and I think a lot of the time it's challenging because with an artist, you know, it starts with this person and with their thought process and their creative process, and there's a lot of steps to take it from that moment to being something that is, you know, digestible by the average consumer. And there's a lot of different places that those things can live in selling. There's, you know, specialty brands I work with that make only one-of-a-kind things or limited edition things. That's marketing to a totally different audience than, say, you know, when I will, you know, freelance and be working for like a Kmart or something like larger, you know. I feel like one of my strongest skill sets in consulting is laying out what it is that you need to do in order to make a brand. and sort of guiding and helping people through what they want that to look like. And it is on so many layers, like you said, it's like it's in everything. It's in the font, it's in every single thing that you put into your outward facing branding. All has an effect on how people respond to it. And knowing what that tone of voice needs to be, knowing is there a place in the market for it, and understanding, okay, there is a place in the market for this, or there's a gap that we can fill, there's a niche. What's going to separate us from the other people who are doing that? It's really tricky, and that's one of those things that, as far as where I take practical knowledge and strategy and put it together, being like, okay, well, this is the strategy we can take based on this is your identification as a brand, and helping them decide what that's going to be.
You know, it struck me as you were saying that, because you've talked a lot about mentorship as well, and mentorship and consulting are two different things, and yet they often overlap. So I'm going to ask you sort of a separate question, because clearly if you're working with independent brands and brands that are just starting, there's also mentorship going on, right? Because you have all of this experience. What's that part look like when you're working with someone who's putting their name out there for the first time and maybe might be hesitant about how to put themselves out there?
It's interesting because there's a lot of, I would say, fostering of the talent that needs to happen. You know, I understand as an artist, I understand that sensation of putting yourself out there in that way. That unbelievable vulnerability. If you're like, okay, I made this, I'm gonna put it out in the world and see if somebody likes it. And I think it's important to help people really find what it is that they want to say. A lot of people have an idea of, you know, they have an idea in their head of some other brand or a competitor or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, you know, like that, let's do it like that. It's like, okay, but what's your voice? And it's really about asking the hard questions and having them really think about it and not just taking the first thing that somebody says always to. And sometimes people will answer me when I'll ask them really important questions, and I know that that's sort of a programmed response that they're having, and it's my job to then break that down and find other ways to discuss it where I will get more of the answers that I need, and they'll hear more of the answers that really are coming from a deeper place in them.
Right. Because there has to be an authenticity, especially, like you said earlier. I mean,
there has to be.
Right.
Especially now. Like, nobody gives a crap about just like big name stuff that's just flashing in your face. You're like, yeah, I get it. If I'm totally into that, I'll just go get that for that moment. Like, I'll go to Amazon and I'll get, you know, my dish rack because I just want it to be here. But for anything that is something that has meaning to somebody, to the consumer, they're looking for much more than that now. There has to be authenticity, not just of the brand and the brand voice, but now it goes so far as like what you stand for and, you know, what your value system is, and, you know, where do I want to put my money? Do I want to put my money with that brand? Do they represent me in the marketplace?
It's the perfect time to go into Playout then. So you're now also the Chief Creative Officer at Playout Underwear, which is a relatively new role. Tell us a little bit about Playout, because it's exactly that type of a brand, right? It's a very niche in the sense that there's a very direct consumer, a consumer that is looking for a particular emotional connection to a brand, also for products that fit them in a certain way. What got you interested in this brand, and I mean, there's so many directions you could have gone that you decided to you know, plant your flag a little bit in this area.
Well, this was a combination of like perfect timing in multiple areas of my career. I'm also the co-owner, so when I joined this company, it was probably like a year ago, June. I was at a point in my career, I was still at Intermix full-time, and I really was feeling the effects of the current administration. I was feeling the effects in my community, and I wanted to have a place to put ideas and a marketing strategy that was more meaningful than just talking about whatever the latest trend is or whatever it is that happens to be a hot button word. And it came up right at this great time. The co-founder and my business partner had started this company a few years back with her ex-wife, and they had gotten divorced and they were kind of fighting about it in court. Who got custody of the company, and she got custody of the company, and then was like, okay, well, I need to have my business partner and figure out how we're going to make this work. And I had been doing brand consulting for her, and then as we were talking about it, I was like, or I could just do it. And she was like, no, would you? And I was like, I think I would. Let's just do this. And it really hit the spot at the time. It for me personally, it was something that I wanted, a direction I wanted to move in. But definitely as a creative, it was going to be a new challenge for me to find a way to market and have that market be not just have more inclusivity and broad representation, but also with a foundation in a belief system. And basically taking that and looking at it from a marketing perspective was going to be a new thing for me in my career. I mean, I have known a lot of people who've had other brands and been like, that's amazing, that's awesome, but for me personally, where I was in my career, I have spent a long time selling to the 1% of the 1% and looking at everything, breaking it down like, are they in New York, LA, or Dubai, or Paris, or London? Like, and everything else is kind of like, okay, we'll worry about that later. And really thinking about it more on this grassroots level, and having it be much more pregnant with meaning.
You are in the process, well actually the campaign is already out, but you're still in the process of developing this campaign, and very much in response to the current administration and a lot of the political conversations that are happening. Talk about that a little bit, because I think this is sort of a culmination of what you were talking about, right? Just this, how do we brand, it's a niche brand, it's a niche market, how do we stay very true to the message without being exclusive? Because that's a difficult thing to do.
It is. I mean, it's interesting because we are self-identified as a queer brand, but we have tons and tons of straight people that buy our underwear. We have straight couples that buy our underwear and wear the same size and joke to us about how they fight over the last pair of fitting ones. I think it's hilarious that they're sharing underwear. But I was like, hey, because it's not gendered, you can do that. Basically, we started this campaign, and it's called Play Out with Pride, and we wanted to talk a little bit more to our aspirational shoppers. We have a lot of followers and a lot of people that are not necessarily in the market to spend $25 on each pair of underwear that they buy, but they love the brand and the messaging, and they love what we stand for, and are fans. And you know, a lot of large companies, every large company and everyone that I've worked for, we spend hours and hours sitting in rooms, you know, looking at all of our data, doing beta testing, trying to figure out, okay, how do we start talking to the next generation of shoppers for us? Not necessarily who's buying from us now, who's going to buy from us 5 years now, 10 years now. And I thought this is the perfect opportunity because it's something that I want to do anyway because it just goes with our brand, but it can have this other layer of speaking more to our aspirational shoppers and really telling people's personal stories and reaching people on a different level. We had a close friend of mine this past summer had their niece come and visit them from Wichita, Kansas, and had been really upset and was bullied sort of to the point that they were suicidal and seeking therapy. And my friends were like, oh, come and stay with us for like 6 weeks in the city during the summer. And they were telling me how they purchased her like these clothes that she wanted, and she had a bow tie and all these things, and they bought her a bunch of play-out underwear. It's like, just doing this wardrobe, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that's what that order was for, because I saw it go through, but I was like, oh, they're just buying more underwear. And then my fiance, we were able to actually use our network to find a friend of hers whose mom is a therapist in Wichita, who could find somebody on a sliding scale that they could go see when they came back. But we're talking about somebody who's a junior in high school and who really was kind of at their wit's end, and knew about our brand because of my friends who buy the underwear and follow it. And I was like, wow, if there's one of those, there's a lot more that are paying attention. And if I have a forum to help and to put a message out there that says, like, you really just need to hang in there. Like, all of these people have their personal stories of how they got to where they are. And you can do that too. Like, you just have to, even if you have to, like, white knuckle it, just hang in there. Like, myself, everyone I know, like, everybody has their story.
We've all left Wichita at some point.
Yes, exactly. So it really, you know, I felt like now is the time to do this.
And that's such a different brand engagement when it means more than just the clothes, right?
We're not, we made a campaign that was not about selling underwear to sell underwear. I was like, we are maybe a little bit insane, but let's do it.
Well, this is a huge campaign. I mean, you are, how many people have been involved so far?
Well, now we've shot 17 people for it, and we have a list of 40 waiting to participate, which is amazing. So it's basically gonna be an evergreen campaign that we're gonna do installations of. We'll do seasonal campaigns as well, but it's gonna be something that we do new installations, like every 8 weeks. We're gonna go in the studio again and shoot another 8 to 10 participants and get their story
and
share
we
it.
were talking sort of about this before, that in this process also stories are coming out as well, because and full disclosure, Liz convinced me to do this campaign, so that's a little weird to tell you since you're my students, but eventually I will be up there. But it's you know, as a stylist and a creative director, I was always on the other side of the camera, so it was a very weird experience to be on that side of the camera. And I know that that's been the case for a lot of people who come in, not very comfortable with their bodies, not thinking that they want to be shot on camera for the world to see. And what's that been like?
Well, it's been amazing because the response has overwhelmingly been that when they leave, they're really excited about the images and really happy to have participated. And I take that as a personal vote of confidence from them, but also, I think we've created a space and we've worked hard at that. And I think that's true in any time you're shooting anything. And I can't tell you, like, I've worked on sets for so many years, and I've worked on sets that were not enjoyable, and I've, made it really a task of mine to always create an environment for shooting where the model feels comfortable, all of the crew members feel comfortable being there, that there's nothing, not about it, obviously not inappropriate, but also that just it's a good working environment where everybody is there to do their job. There's, no divas, no drama, like we don't have time for it, we have a lot to get done always. And just everybody being there, wanting to be where they are in that moment. And I feel like we have created this space where people are like, yeah, I was freaking out about it on the way over here, but sure, I'm gonna get in my underpants and be on this camera. And they're like, yeah, let's do this. And everyone has enjoyed themselves and said how thankful they were, which that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I have to say, it was a very amazing experience. Not something that I had on my bucket list to do, for sure. I want to open it up to questions, just because I know we're getting a little bit closer to the end here. If someone could grab the mic, that'd be... And while you're doing that, so each shot that you have in this campaign, there is also an interview of sorts with
Yep.
and a profile. So this is a real, these are about the people who you're shooting.
Yeah, so everyone models, and then we send them a questionnaire, and basically it's speaking about, you know, what community means to them, advice to somebody who is maybe struggling or having a challenge, either with their own identity or you know, their place inside of the community. And everyone has been so forthcoming with their answers and been really, really generous of spirit and very enthusiastic, much more so than I even anticipated. I thought that there might be more reservation in what people said, but we've gotten things where I'm reading the email back from them and I'm like, oh, my tears are going down, and it's like, you know, this is one of those things that if we can reach even one person out there that is having a hard time, and even just for that moment, they're like, okay, like, I can do this.
That's kind of the amazing thing about online retailing and just online in general, that there's that ability to connect.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about social media, which, you know, for all of its faults, and I do feel like there's quite a few, the great thing about it is that connection that you can make. That from that remote place, that I can sit there and open up my feed in the morning and look at something, or take a screen grab of a piece of art, or, you know, see that somebody is doing something on the other side of the world and be like, that's awesome. I gotta go kick some ass today. That always, I think, redeems a lot of the other nonsense that goes on.
Sure. Questions?
Hi. So, I have a question. What leadership tactics have given you the best results when you're managing really large teams?
Well, I think I've worked really hard over the years of developing my emotional intelligence. EQ is like everything as a manager. No two people are the same. They don't respond to criticism the same way. They don't respond to positive feedback the same way. I think basically dealing with people as individuals and speaking with them on their own terms, understanding where somebody's coming from, hearing their cues, seeing their body language, understanding what it is that they may or may not be comfortable with, even if they're not comfortable enough to say it to you. You can really get an understanding of who somebody is and how you're going to get the best out of them.
Thank you.
So interesting, I just read a quote the other day that said that the golden rule is sort of, but there's the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would want you to do unto them. I thought it was really interesting. It was kind of, to ask people what they want, and this idea of consent.
I'm very vocal about that too. I'll just ask people, I'm like, do you like direct communication? Do you need a little bit of sugar with your, what works best for you? And I'll even ask people that in the interview process.
And I have one more question
Sure.
too. How did you transition your job as a stylist into something that was more like creative direction, or like overall?
So that ended up happening somewhat organically. I did a lot of test shooting though too. So I did have like a decent portfolio with creative direction by me as well, and used that to help get other jobs. For me, it became, I was lucky enough that I was working a lot with photographers too, and I've tried to do this as a creative director with stylists, is be very inclusive of their perspective and to actually invite them to the monitor and have, hear their input as well, which a lot of people don't do. But I feel like it's really important as a creative director and as a photographer to really hear what they're seeing as well. And they do come with a different set of eyes and a specialized skill set as well. But in doing so from the opposite perspective, as a stylist, it gave me the opportunity to really look at the bigger picture and to start focusing less on just the clothes and just what the model's looking like, and more about what the image itself in every facet of its detail looked like. And composition, paying attention more to the overarching things and the storytelling.
Amazing, thank you.
Just pass it right down.
Hi. On your website, I saw you started expanding your product selection to more than just underwear. Do you plan to continue expanding that? Where do you see your company going from here?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely would like to. It's really tricky because, so for the amount of SKUs that we like to have for each product, we're trying to move first more and more in expanding our size range. So that's our number one priority, is trying to get every single thing that we make to go up to at least 3X, which right now we have, we just got our samples of our thongs and bikinis that go up to 3X, and so we have people out testing them right now and giving us feedback. But like with tank tops and with the boxer brief styles, we have those going up to 3X, and it's really important for us to be able to have a broad size range first before we start adding new product to it. But yeah, definitely we want to move into doing different items, like more, it would be more in like the sleepwear and loungewear.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? In the back, yeah, if you can pass it up. Oh, thank you.
I was wondering if, because I actually was into trying to create better underwear for women a while ago, and I worked with some pattern makers, and I didn't have a ton of money, so I wasn't able to get it just right. But how is your underwear cut differently than like regular women's? Well, it's unisex, right? So
It's, well, technically it's not unisex, it's more like equal opportunity, because what we do is we don't gender our styling in any way. So we basically make all of our underwear with a pouch front or a flat front. So if you are, if you have something that you need space for, or you put something there that you need space for, you have that option. But basically everything is equal opportunity in that way. And for us, so we have very specifically cut our underwear to be functional and comfortable, but still be a little bit sexy. We definitely want to have that sex feel and people feeling good in their own skin. It's cut very low on the hip. It sits really low, but we've done a really thick waistband so that it doesn't fold, and it really prevents a lot of like muffin top. And we've cut it so that even on the boxer briefs trunks, it comes just below the buttock line. So it really highlights, it accentuates the booty. And so it's...
Nobody likes that.
Yeah, and so we definitely have specifically geared our stuff, like our thongs have like a T strap in the back, so it doesn't come up and do like that traditional, like the whale tail. It actually goes into a T strap, so it's a little bit more sporty, and again with this extra thick, very forgiving waistband.
I was mainly just asking about the briefs. I don't care about thongs, sorry.
Yeah, and they're all super, like ultra soft materials. We use like a Svel and Modal, and everything, even the thread, we use like the softest cotton thread, just because it's, you want to be able to sleep comfortably in it if you want to, and wear it all day, and basically forget that you have underwear on.
Cool, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Okay. Oh, right down here. I think this will be our last one.
Hi. So I'm someone who totally loves things to evolve organically and like to be open to opportunity, but I have a hard time putting myself in the right situation to make those things cultivate, I guess you could say. But I'm just wondering for some advice or times where or things that you do to make this to facilitate the organic flow of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm very big on the 50 50,000 foot view of things. I will spend a lot of time looking at more of the big picture of how I can make something happen and then try to move inside of that. But I think the biggest thing, if I'm understanding you correctly, is I think it's being attuned to what the opportunities are. You know, there's all kinds of things that present themselves sort of in, as sort of a fraction of what they could be. And a lot of the times it's really about just going after that little slice and seeing what it can turn into. And you know, I think also when you find yourself attracted or interested in something, actually giving yourself permission to pursue it is a big one. Because I think a lot of people, they'll find reasons or question why they want to do it. But if you have that gut feeling like something's drawing you to that subject matter or to that job or to a company, or you know, it may even be that it's an institution that you're not even sure what you would want to do for them, you know, or a nonprofit or something, but you're like, I would like to work somewhere like that, or I want to work with somebody who's working on things like that. Like, give yourself permission to really explore that and put yourself out there.
I think it's worth adding, because we were talking about this earlier, that sometimes, unfortunately, this is a gendered thing too, that men will put themselves out there more and be more available, and women often won't. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but I think that often voices go unheard, essentially, because they're not willing to put themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's, yeah.
That's another hour and a half.
Oh my gosh, just the amount of things that have happened in boardrooms that have been, I'm like, oh. And even with my own, like, just having those own moments where I leave something and I'm like, why didn't I say that, you know? Or I realize as soon as I get back to my desk, I'm like, I cannot believe that I didn't say that in this meeting. Again, I think that sometimes there's fear or hesitation with things, but ultimately, most of the time, unless you're saying something really derogatory, it's okay to say stuff out loud and to make suggestions or to contribute. Like, especially if you're in meetings, you know, there's obviously you respect protocol in that if somebody else is speaking or there's somebody, you know, above you that is talking, like, wait until they're done and find a good spot to put it. But the only things you regret are things that you don't do. Like, you know what I mean? For the most of the time, I don't have a lot of things where, you know, it's always like the thing I didn't buy. I don't know why. I should just not pay rent and bought that painting. Like, that was dumb. Like, that, it's worth $1 million. Why didn't I do it? You know, or it's always like the thing that I didn't say that is frustrating to me. You know, because you can say something and it can fall on deaf ears for sure, or you can say something and someone else already has another angle to it, or they're like, yeah, we did that already, whatever. But at least the other thing that it shows is that you're actually engaged in it too, and especially when you have people like a hierarchy in that room, you know, engagement and contribution is always huge, and it's always something that, you know, for the most part, is looked at fondly.
And if you're good, you rise to the top. People notice it.
It's true, but you know, you can't wait for other people to notice what you're doing. Like, especially if you have bosses ever and you have the opportunity to have one-on-one meetings with them and you have reviews, you know, productivity reviews, you know, come to that armed with all the stuff that you've worked on. Like, I love when I go into a meeting with somebody and you know, we may have met, you know, once a month for the last year to have a one-on-one or have, like, you know, personal moments in between there to talk about specific things. But that moment, it's my opportunity to catch up on what that person has been doing, and it's their opportunity to really show me all of the things that they've actually contributed to and everything that they've worked on. It's not like tooting your own horn. That's what that's for. It's not something where you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. That is the time to talk about this, and that is what the person is looking for. They want to see all of the amazing stuff that you've been able to do and create. So that, go for it. Like, bring it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that segues into what I typically ask as the last question, and is sort of the advice that you would give to those who are just starting their careers, maybe looking backwards or perhaps even looking forwards. But you know, what type of advice would you give them as they're moving into the fashion industry, whether it's in design or marketing or business?
Well, I think one thing I would say is, you know, don't buy into a lot of the hype. Honestly, everybody is just a person at the end of the day, and there's a lot of people who put on a lot of airs, and you know, no one was born here doing this job, okay? Everybody came from someplace else. Everybody was a kid, everybody was doing all this stuff, everybody was a teenager, like, you know, and everybody evolved into this. So there's a lot of people who have this air about them, like, I just showed up this way. It's like, and I'm impenetrable and perfect and whatever. It's like, no, not so much. You know, just don't let yourself be intimidated by that. There's, you know, everyone worked and had to do stuff that they didn't want to do. Everybody's had jobs where, you know, every job. I'm lucky if I love 40% of my job. Usually I go for 30%. And then there's the 70% you have to do in order to get to do the 30% that you love. Like, that's about the ratio.
That's pretty good too, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm doing pretty better than a lot of people. But you know, just don't be intimidated. Just like have poise, have confidence in yourself, and know that everybody has a right to be in that room. Like, everybody has a right to be at that table. Everyone has something to contribute. The biggest thing is, a lot of people, I feel like in leadership, come from this point of view where they want to surround themselves with people who are like them. And I think it's the biggest mistake that people make. I try to surround myself with people who are all different from me and different from each other. I don't want people to come to me and sit at a table and come up with ideas that I could come up with. I can do that already. What I need is other perspectives, and then everybody together is stronger as a sum than they are as an individual. And together as a team, we're going to make something even more amazing than we could have ever thought of, but definitely that I could have ever thought of. I'm looking to work with people who are going to do stuff better than me. I like this person is a stylist that I'm hiring because they are a better stylist than me. They are amazing at styling. I want them on this team. And the same thing with every single facet of it. Like, it doesn't help, I'm not sitting there trying to, you know, have a bunch of people that are just going to be like, yes, whatever you say. That's not, I'm asking you because I believe that what you're contributing is what I need. That's why I'm asking you to be a part of it. I think that's the biggest thing, is find bosses and leaders and people, you know, find interview questions. When they say, do you have any questions for me? Have questions for them. Like, ask them, what is your management style? What is it that you like to see in an employee? Like, listen and take notes to those things, because they'll be honest with you. People will sit there and they're not going to sit there and be like, yes, I love having people who are outspoken and great or whatever. Like, they're going to say something that is either shifty or shady or covering up something, and then you'll know, like, okay, this person just wants somebody in that room that's just going to be like, You know, if somebody really wants that as a manager, when they're interviewing, they'll tell you. They'll be like, I like people who can do it by themselves. I don't want to have to micromanage you. I want to be able to assign you something and then not have to think about it again unless there's a problem, and then come to me right away and we'll solve it. But you know what I mean? Most of the time, people will actually tell you what it is that they're looking for, and that's more important when you're job hunting than what you're saying to them. Like, it's important, because this person, you're going to entrust the next stage of your career to them. You're going to trust that this person is going to help guide you and lead you and build your career into the next place that you want to go. That's a lot of responsibility. I take that responsibility very seriously, but I've had a lot of bosses who didn't. I've had some that did, that were amazing. I've had mentors that were amazing, that changed my life forever because they were so forthcoming with information and wanted me to do well. But yeah, find the people that they see your success as a good reflection on them.
I can't say it any better. That's perfect. We're going to end there. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you.
So glad you were here.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, so I will not see you next week. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Good luck with all of your juries this week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.